Top Gun Maverick is the sequel to the original 80s classic and is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who previously brought us Only the Brave and Tron Legacy, and focuses on Pete Mitchell receiving a special assignment to train a detachment of Top Gun graduates for an impossible run, but must confront the scars of his past and deepest fears in the process. The original Top Gun is just one of those classics that anybody could probably recognize or have heard about. To date, it's probably the most 80s film I've ever seen, between its humor, cast, and soundtrack. Pretty much everything about it screams iconic 80s film. But strangely, I feel like that's where this film was able to succeed and get the charm that allowed it to become a classic in the first place. And let me just say, if you think Avatar fans had to wait forever to get their second installment, I'm just going to tell you that 80s kids had to wait nearly 40 years to get their Top Gun sequel. And now that I've seen the film, I can safely say that this film has gone above and beyond what I'm sure most people were expecting from a studio, bringing back an old property everyone's familiar with. Because as far as I'm concerned, I could see this being considered one of the greatest sequels out there as the years go on. I'm not exaggerating. There is not a single aspect of this film that is underwhelming. Everything is raised to maximum quality. The film's story is completely focused on expanding the themes and story of the first in new compelling ways, and this comes from the family dynamic the movie sets up between Maverick and Goose's son Rooster, and the fears Maverick gained from the death of his friend. And the emotion that comes from this all feels so genuine. Whether you've seen the original or not, you understand Maverick's fears perfectly, but also want to root for Rooster to succeed and live up to his full potential. The film is without a doubt a lot deeper than the original, which was mostly focused on being the next big talk of the 80s. This one completely focuses on the emotion and further explores the themes like moving on even better than the original movie did. And these choices feel so natural where it would be harder to see a Top Gun sequel not continuing the story like this. And yet, despite the deep, complex tone, the film loses none of the charm from the original 80s classic. The humor and dialogue give off the same wit and energy as the original. The film succeeds in humor as much as it succeeds in emotion. There are also a ton of scenes and story beats that call back to the original film as well as every other 80s film of its time, and feel like love letters to the first film and the decade it was released in, and never once comes off as fanservice or nostalgia bait in the slightest. I swear, the opening of this film puts you right back in the world of this movie. When Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone, not even covered by a modern pop star, but the original song started playing to an aviation montage, completely remastered across the high-quality IMAX speakers, I almost teared up because it felt so perfect and immediately kicked the movie into high gear with no stop in sight. And all this, leading up to one of the most well-staged, action-infused, pulse-pounding, stress-inducing third acts I've seen in any film this year, Batman and Multiverse of Madness included. But what this film succeeds the most in is the visuals and stunts. The scale of the film feels so huge. What's insane to think about is how no CG is used for the aviation and dogfight scenes. Nearly all of it was filmed in real cockpits during real flights, and because of that, the film single-handedly invented a new kind of filmmaking that will be so hard to replicate because it feels genuinely realistic. And the cinematography, editing, and sound design are near perfect. You feel like you are actually in the cockpit with the characters, and you feel the G-force and high-pressure sounds around you at full volume all the way deep into your chest when watching, especially in the premium formats like IMAX. And it's for that reason why I consider Top Gun Maverick to be the perfect reason why theaters are the best possible way to experience films. It's impossible to see how the same experience would have been replicated if Paramount kept the 2020 release but put it on VOD. The scale and craftsmanship that made this film feel more like an experience would have been decimated, and that joy large-scale, wide-appeal blockbusters like these bring would have been lost.
In Top Gun Maverick, you're going to see real actors in the cockpit and the full capability of the airplane when you're watching the movie.
At this point, do I even need to talk about TomCruise? Nearly 40 years later, and he's still perfect as his original character, which can't be said about most aging actors of their time. Heck, he doesn't even look like he aged a week since that film. It's also insane what they did with his character, as I mentioned, fleshing Maverick out even more and going deep into his pre-established character development. And Miles Teller is perfection in this. Honestly, this might be my favorite performance from him, maybe even his best. The emotion his character brings out and his chemistry with Tom Cruise makes the whole picture. Jennifer Connelly gets an 80s style romance with Cruise, and she has that charm of the old fashioned love interest that makes the subplot so much more enjoyable and feel less forced. There are also a ton of new pilots in this film that I could talk about, but they're all so well performed. They execute that high school graduate energy the actors in the original film did perfectly, and are fun to watch in every scene. However, that leads to my one flaw with this film, which is that outside their introduction scene at that beach bar, we sadly never get to know them more, and they go under the belt from there due to the film's focus on Maverick and Rooster, with Glenn Powell's Hangman being the only true exception to this. But then there's the star everyone will be talking about, Val Kilmer. Even though I praise the third act, he easily had one of the best scenes of the film. Knowing what Kilmer's gone through, it's such a touching tribute to the actor. Top Gun Maverick is one of the best films of this year by a landslide, expanding the themes and story of the first in a new compelling way without relying on any fan service to drive the story, and instead incorporates everything that reminds us why the world loves iconic blockbusters, and possibly cinema in general. For the love of all things 80s, don't miss this one. It doesn't matter what your taste in film is or whether you've seen the original or not, it's harder to see anyone not adoring this film. And a little warning, if you don't see this in IMAX or just decide to wait until it comes to streaming, you're not watching the film correctly. This is a film made exclusively for theaters and needs to be seen on the biggest screen possible. I'm giving Top Gun Maverick a 9 out of 10, although I could see it being bumped up to a 10 on rewatch. So those are my thoughts on Top Gun Maverick. What did you think of it? Did you love it? Do you think it was better than the original film, as many have been saying? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I still have a Bob's Burgers movie review planned sometime this weekend, so be sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button to be notified for that video and more upcoming reviews.
Your reputation precedes you.
I have to admit, I wasn't expecting an invitation back.
They're called orders, Maverick.